Kids, this football season, Bell Bank is giving one KFAN listener each week $1,000 to pay it forward to a charity of their choice. Just head over to KFAN.com, keyword contest, to learn more and enter today. That is KFAN.com, keyword contest.
A lot of people are waiting for the arrival of Brian Oak at 1:30. A lot of other people are waiting for the arrival, anxiously waiting the arrival of the legendary Mark Rosen at 2 o'clock. But right now it's time for 534.
Time now for 5 questions. Well, actually 3, but 5 sounds like more than 4. Question number 1.
Live from the dimly lit iHeartMedia studios in St. Louis Park, it's the
2024
NFL Midseason Awards. And now, your host of the program, the NFL Buffoon at Noon, the common man, Dan Cole.
From the dimly lit studios is the dim wit. That would be me.
Well,
I am the common. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the NFL Midseason Awards. First nominees are for Midseason MVP, Common. Pat Mahomes, quarterback, Kansas City. Josh Allen, quarterback, Buffalo. Lamar Jackson, quarterback, Baltimore.
Jared Goff,
quarterback, Detroit. Or Sam Darnold, quarterback of your Minnesota Vikings.
I would say Sam Goff. I would say Jared Goff. And I know, Common, you're just being a homer because the roar has been restored. Numbers are astonishing. Does it help he has one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best? That he has, what did we call his running attack? Knuckles and...
what's the name of the Sonic the Hedgehog? Yeah, Sonic.
Is it Sonic and Knuckles?
Sonic and Knuckles.
I mean, does it help that he has Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield? Yes. Does it help that he has Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and when he's not gambling or using performance-enhancing drugs, Jameson Williams, yeah, but those quarterback ratings that he's been posting, the team has more touchdowns and interceptions over the past 4 or 5 weeks. He doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, doesn't throw many interceptions. That could all change, but right now, I would give it to Goff. How about you?
I think I would. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to placate the listeners like you that love the Detroit Lions, but Pat Mahomes, obviously they're undefeated, but hasn't put up, I don't think, MVP-type numbers. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are kind of in the same boat, but Jared Goff has been absolutely brilliant, and their team might be the best in football. So I'll agree with you. The nominees for Midseason Coach of the Year are Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions; Andy Reid, Kansas City Chiefs; Dan Quinn, Washington Commanders; Raheem Morris, Atlanta Falcons; or Kevin O'Connell of your Minnesota Vikings.
I might give it to the mighty Quinn. The Commanders, terrible team, terrible city, terrible fans, terrible state. Well, they're not actually really a city, are they? So why did Washington DC...
Well, it's weird they play in the NFC East because they're on the West Coast in Washington.
You know,
like
I've never made sense that to me either.
Yeah.
How does the state of Washington have 2 football teams? But, and again, sort of like in the Goff situation, it helps when you have Distat Lat. Certainly doesn't hurt that you got Jaden Daniels, young quarterback playing as well as he has, but I think it's more than that, and so I think, Campbell, the club was really good last year, so is it that much harder to coach this one? And Kevin O'Connell probably, also receiving votes, but I think I would give it to the Quinn character. How about you?
I think after Quinn, I might have KOC second, assuming this is sustainable to take, a Sam Darnold quarterback situation, right? Andy Reid's got Mahomes, Campbell's got Goff, Raheem Morris has got Kirk Cousins, and here's KOC with a quarterback who's been written off everywhere he's gone and has him up to 6-2 record. So I think after Dan Quinn's got a rookie quarterback and has had as you mentioned, an organization that's just been awful forever. So I would give it to Quinn, but I think KOC should be second on that list.
Yeah, I would say so as well.
Your nominees for midseason biggest surprise are Jaden Daniels, quarterback, Washington; Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Tampa Bay; Kyler Murray, quarterback Arizona, or Sam Darnold of your Minnesota Vikings?
Sam Darnold. I don't think I need to explain it. Plus, I got a mouthful of food. What do you think?
I think Darnold's there. I mean, obviously, there's no actual surprise award that's going to be given out at the end of the year, but Jaden Daniels, it's not often a rookie quarterback explodes out of the scene like he has, so that's a little bit of surprise, but yeah, I'd probably put Darnold first.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Yeah, all right.
All right, final one. Our midseason award for the biggest disappointment. New York Jets, Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers.
I'm not really disappointed with the Jets. I'm excited about it. So I wouldn't call it biggest disappointment. I would say because...
What about Aaron Rodgers specifically?
Yeah, well, here's what I will say. Rattle off those teams. Jets, who else?
Jets, Browns, Cowboys, 49ers.
I never thought much of the Cowboys. 49ers, after coming off a big game appearance, you kind of thought, well, why would they... Hardest is, of course, the Chiefs do it every year, but they're a whole different thing. Why would we expect San Francisco to be? I mean, they're not even. What is their record? Right?
4-4.
Yeah,
they're still in the mix.
Yeah, right. So
they can still salvage.
For me, it would be the Jets because everybody, the people I trust, talking to people, reading things, were that the Jets are pretty loaded on both sides of the ball. Had the potential of some really good skilled position players, especially with a quarterback that could get them the ball, a 4-time MVP. Defense is supposed to be pretty good. So I think there were high hopes. You saw the NFL schedule. I don't think they do that just because of Rodgers. They had a lot of primetime games. A lot of it has to do with Rodgers, but it was also because everybody thought the Jets would be pretty good. It's the New York market. So I would say they've been the biggest disappointment. Are they 3-6?
3-6. They did win last week, but
yeah. So they rebounded, but yeah.
Question number 2.
We're gonna win, Twins. We're gonna score.
It's now time to delve deep into Twins territory.
Cracked out a home run, shot a hit, hooray! Cheer for the Minnesota Twins today.
Derek Falvey spoke to the media yesterday at the general manager's meeting. Apparently a reporter was trying to be funny because when when asked if the Twins could be a surprise team on free agent Juan Soto by a reporter, Falvey said, quote, "I would say our payroll is going to land in a very similar place to where we have been historically. The Twins are expected to be around last year's $130 million payroll." Falvey added, "We're going to have to be creative if we want to make a lot of tweaks to the group. In some ways, I do believe that the group we have as constituted is a really good team, a really competitive team. I know we need some guys to come back. We need some guys to be healthy. We feel it's a good group to build off, but we're going to just have to see where the rest of the offseason shakes out from a trade standpoint." Common, what are your thoughts on Falvey's comments yesterday?
Well, I think you don't think he's going to say, you kidding me? You think we're going to sign any free agents? Have you been watching the club? He's not going to do it in that way, but I think basically...
I think he kind of acknowledged they're not going to do much for free agents.
But I mean, he didn't just rip the club about it. He didn't do like sarcastic, "You kidding me? You really think we're going to add to that Soto?" Have you watched how this ownership group has operated over the past 40 years? I think he, like you say, he is acknowledging that, no, we're not. They're not going to be in the free agent sweepstakes, especially when they've announced their intent to explore the possibility of selling the team. If it's, did I make this analogy once already? It's, if you're going to sell, if you're going to sell a house, most real estate agents will tell you, you don't go investing a lot of money into the house. You might have to do a couple of things to gussy it up a little bit, but the money you put into your house before you sell it, you're not going to get back, generally speaking. So if the Twins are going to sell the club, I don't think why they would load up on salary, especially if they don't sell it. Then they're stuck with that. I would agree with, if you look at the way the team played up until they slumped the last 6 weeks, pitching staff wasn't half bad. Lopez was good. Joe Ryan, Holber was okay. Bullpen didn't live up to expectations, though. I think early on, what's-his-face was... Thielbar, I think, was really good early to midseason, if I'm not mistaken. And you look at their everyday guys, they have young kids that have promise, and the three nucleus, if they could stay healthy, I'd put Lewis and Buxton and Correa up against a lot of other people, but they can't stay healthy. The young guy, we've talked about this forever, tend to be just because a young guy has a good season, but season 1 or 2 doesn't mean he's going to keep growing on that. That's what the Pohlad pocket protectors always wanted to sell us. Boy, these young guys coming back, we got a deep and talented lineup. We were told by at least one Pohlad pocket protector that his opinion was this team, even with letting Sonny Gray go, this team, and without replacing him with an adequate, not getting an adequate replacement, this lineup is so dangerous, they'll be able to carry this team through much of the season. Now, that didn't really happen, especially late in the year. Their offense was as ineffective as any offense in Major League Baseball. It was bad. So, if they come back with the exact same team and add one bat of, ill repute, just some mid-level guy, they'll probably be okay, but they're certainly not a threat, I don't think, to win a division, and they're certainly not a threat to make the playoffs and go anywhere. So I think Falvey's kind of it's cool to have the job he has, but he's kind of in a bad spot. I mean, I bet he looks with envy at other clubs and goes, God, it'd be nice to be able to have a little bit of money and go out and get some guys and, really play baseball instead of I got to do everything on a shoestring budget. But it's still a cool job to have, so I don't expect much different. Let's
And that's it for today's edition of 5 Questions. Well, actually 3 questions, but 5 sounds like more than 4.
We'll be taking a break here. We come back. We'll talk a little distat lat.
We might be, depending on KOC, he might be available this segment to listen to.
That'd be cool. And then Oak at 1:30, Rosen at 2 here on The Fan.
Hey, The Fan and 2 men in a junk truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Just enter the keyword credit at KFAN.com now for a shot at winning. That keyword is credit. Enter now at KFAN.com. Your Minnesota Wild, other than last night, are red hot to start the season. Don't miss out on seeing them in action. Tickets are available now at wild.com/hockey tickets. That's wild.com/hockey tickets to get yours today.
You had a choice to go to the Wild game, buy tickets and go to the Wild game, or go see Flop, Sweat, and Tears for free. You have to pay full price for the Wild tickets. What would you rather do?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
We're in Abbott's neighborhood tonight. He keeps asking me, should I show up for the show? We're at the Mudroom in Mendota. It's in Abbott's backyard. Sauce and I, doors are at 6. Show starts 7 sharp. Sauce and Common.
Oh, boy.
There are people that have not watched me perform stand-up comedy before. A lot of people, when they see it, say, would you sit down, please? But when I do stand up, I've had people say I remind them of kind of a combination of Dennis Miller, Jerry Stiller, and Phyllis Diller. And I take that compliment because those are 3 of the 3 legendary stand-up comics from the craft. The craft of comedy is what we call it, tend to be. I can't even say it with a straight face. And Sauce and I will be there tonight. We look forward.
Well, Abbott's got to be there. He's got no excuse when it's that close.
I would hope so. It's early enough. It's not like it's a late night game. CBS Sports also released their power rankings tonight. It's similar to what we saw from ESPN. Chiefs, Lions, Bills, Commanders, Ravens, Steelers. They have Vikings at 7, Packers at 8, Eagles at 9. They have the Chargers at 10. I think people are starting to believe in this Chargers club a little bit, Teneby, and I know you and I have both thought over the years, it seems like every year people go, this Chargers team is going to contend for a title, and then they always end up short. And then our other power rankings that we always like to take a look at are NFL.com's power rankings. And they've got the Motor City Kitties as the number 1 team in the National Football League. Lions moved to 7-1 with a statement win over the rival Packers, boosting their record against their two main competitors in the NFC North to 2-0, with both wins coming on the road. They've allowed a total of 65 points over 4 road games, 3 of which were against teams currently in the playoff mix. Despite missing the injured Aiden Hutchinson over the past 3 games, the defense has held strong, and now pass rush help on the way in the form of Zadarius Smith. Offensively, even with receiver Jamison Williams being suspended for the past 2 games, Kitty scored 76 points, though the defense and special teams deserve some credit for that total, too. The remaining schedule is by no means a cakewalk, but Detroit has triumphed indoors and outdoors, with Sunday's W coming in the cold rain. This group is built to win in several different ways, and it's one of the few teams in the league that are equipped to handle. Hard to argue with a lot of that. Chiefs at 2, Bills at 3, Ravens 4, Commanders 5, and then they also have the Vikings at number 6.
Okay.
Sunday night's win over the Colts marked a return to form for the Vikings defense and the level we'd seen prior to their Week 6 bye. B-Flow's unit hounded Joe Flacco and Jonathan Taylor, picking off Flacco for the team's 13th pick of the season, which is a terrific total through 8 games. It allowed the Colts a mere 6 offensive points, all on Figgies, with Indianapolis' only tutty coming on. And they have, in parentheses, controversial, and it was on a controversial scoop and score. Sammy Darnold coughed that one up, and he had a seriously up-and-down game. Ultimately, his 3 tutty second half proved to be enough. Until then, the defense buoyed the team while the offense stalled. There likely was some adjustment around the arrival of Cam Robinson, who took over as left tackle. But Darnold's play has flatlined recently. They'll need him to pick things back up as the Vikings hit the road for the duration of November. And, you know, we talked about that the last day or so, and even a little bit last week, but particularly coming off of, you could call Sunday's performance uneven, particularly when you compare the first half to the second half. It was almost night and day, right? And while it appears, remember all the talk about if any rookie quarterback's going to get drafted by a team that's ready to just plug you in and you got a lot going for you, it was the Minnesota Vikings. And so at the time I said, well, then why can't the same be said for Sam Darnold? Maybe it was the situations he was in with the New York Football Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and of course he just rode the pine for San Francisco. But and maybe Sam, I mean, he's played pretty well overall, right? Hard to argue.
Yeah.
You know, he's had some, when he throws a tutty, it's usually really bad, or interception is usually a really bad one, like we saw in the first half of the Colts game where he threw it right. You know, he admitted himself, he said it afterwards, you know, you got to take care of the ball better. You know, you got to throw it in a spot where your guy's going to catch it or nobody's going to catch it. And he just threw it right to a...
Like sometimes these quarterbacks, they can get like kind of like the bad luck interceptions, right? Like you threw it to Jordan Addison and it hits his hands and bounces up and gets picked off. Or you got to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the game and it gets picked off. But it seems like all of his interceptions have been on him and they've been bad interceptions.
And I don't know how you feel. We talked about this earlier. I think was today Wednesday. Maybe we talked about it Monday.
Regardless,
I'm not sure if I'm ready to say, but I think maybe I am, that what you see is what you get. I don't think Sam Darnold is going to go to and maybe he will. I mean, if you're a Viking fan, you hope he does. Maybe he will go to another level where he eliminates or at least minimizes those bad plays and plays more like the first half and the second half. I think we're still going to get a lot of both. I really do. I think there's going to be moments where he's going to be a brilliant and brutal guy, I think. And I think you just have to live with that. And maybe not. Maybe that penchant for... He reminds me of Mullins. I think he's better than Mullins, but doesn't he remind you? Because didn't Mullins have several games where he threw for 400 yards and a couple of touchdowns, but he would have 2 interceptions, and they came at the most inopportune time?
I think Mullins' gunslinging goes to another level.
Yes.
He's another level past Darnold.
I agree.
And Darnold at least has had some moments this year that when they've needed a drive out of him, he's produced during that time in big moments.
That's correct. So, and the other thing, we talked about this when we had Cousins. There's nothing we can do about it now. He's your guy, right? I mean, it's like when we had Cousins, people were like, if we didn't have Cousins, we got to get rid of Cousins. Well, that might be true. You can feel that way. But when you're like in week 3 or 4 of the season, that's who you're with, especially when you have a guy with a contract. That Cousins, that's who you just have to hope he plays well. And even with Darnold, I don't think they're all of a sudden going to go, unless Darnold, completely fell off the face of the earth. They're not going to say, well, Nick Mullins is our guy. Sam Darnold is starting every game.
I do wonder if J.J. McCarthy was healthy, right? Would we start hearing the whispers of should he be replaced, right? I don't think after the first 2-3 games, I think Darnold played well enough where we would not have heard anything. But the last couple games, he's had some moments that haven't looked good. And I do wonder if we'd be hearing the chatter of, should we be playing J.J. McCarthy or not?
I think we would. And I think I was on record. If I wasn't, I am now. I would have started the season with McCarthy. If he had not been hurt.
And he might have.
I would have started him. I would have just said, because again, I know the idea that, well, it's a big step up from college football to the NFL. And I get that, but sure hasn't seemed to slow down Jaden Daniels much. Now you can say, well, okay, that's one guy, but look at the other guys that haven't. There are other guys that haven't played as well, right? Caleb Williams has been up and down, right? Would that be accurate?
He's started down. He's been better recently, though.
So, maybe Jaden Daniels is an anomaly. I don't know, but I wouldn't have mind seeing McCarthy see what we got. But that won't happen until next year at the earliest. Right now, it's time for Brian Oak on the other side of the break with Rock Talk. Right now, though, it's time for a Wild Today with Henna.
Yeah, this is Wild Today, brought to you by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild. The Wild were taken down by the Kings 5-1 last night at XL Energy Center, and an old familiar face contributed for Los Angeles.
Included Fiala. That thing pinballed around just away from LaFerrier. Now a drive by Fiala, and he scores. The Wild never able to reset, and Kevin Fiala, the former Wild winger, has haunted this team a bunch the last couple of years, and he makes it 2-1 LA.
Yeah, Kevin Fiala scored the go-ahead goal for LA. They steamrolled the Wild from there. Zach Bogosian had the lone Wild goal. Wild dropped to 8-2-2. It's still good for third best in the NHL. Kirill Kaprizov, by the way, did exit the game after taking a puck to the face, but returned for the third period. Up next for the Wild to begin a 3-game road trip tomorrow night. Do you know the way to San Jose? That was Wild Today, brought to you by Jim Beam, a crowd pleaser since 1795. Brian Oak, Rock Talk next.
Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and day rates apply.
It's a couple 13-14 past. I'm Com, and that's Kara. Thank you for your assistance today. She's been working on Wolves liners. Is that what you were working on, did you say?
Yeah. Still working technically, but
Boy.
Someone admonished me in either a text message or an email, said I'm being too hard on you. I should leave you alone. And I said, oh, pray tell. I said, she can take it, and it's all in good fun. It's what we do here. We tease each other. I don't. Have I been mean to you? Do you feel offended? Have I said anything that?
no, I don't think so.
I didn't think
felt
so
offended.
either. Yeah.
Because what a perfectly
I can
safe
take it.
venue to admit it. See, that's the thing. Knowing as little as I do about her and only having met her as many times as I have, she could totally take it. And let's be honest, as this business becomes more and more grueling, you're not going to succeed by being coddled. You are going to have the tough love covenant. Am I right?
That's what we call it. We always have, and we always will. Closed circuit to Barry the Art Guy. I sent the check. I sent 2 checks out to people I owed money to. Barry the Art Guy did the artwork for the Flop, Sweat, and Tears.
Would you give him a percentage?
No, just will you do this artwork? And he told me what he would charge for it. So,
No, that was the joke. So that's maybe why you got no money.
wah. Trust me, we sell plenty of
I'm
t-shirts.
sure you do.
They love us. Anyway, and he was just joking with me now. And I said, you got the check then? And he goes, never got it. And I said, it's in the mail. Well, I did. I sent it. I know I did. I went to the post office and put it in a slot. And I sent another check to someone. And I just texted my wife. I don't remember who it was. My memory's so bad. We just talked about it. You have a bad memory.
Oof.
I sent out another check that same day to somebody else for more money than what I sent. So it's like, did that check not arrive? And do people, I think people do steal mail out of mailboxes, and if they find a check in it, are they able to cash it without an ID?
Who's got a mailbox without a lock on it anymore? They can just put it like on the front door. You can just throw everything through a little slot, and then no, don't let people touch your mail, man.
Well, not everybody has a mail slot in their door.
Not in the. I mean, in the door of the mailbox, they have those kinds of openings on there as well. If it's bigger than that slot, then you'll have to go see your neighbor.
Yeah, but I don't know if that'll stop a thief. Like I remember when I was in New York, a window was broke. I'm not making this up. A window was broke out on the car, and the owner of the car had sent a sign. Doors are unlocked, nothing here to steal. And the thief sent a letter that said, just checking. And he broke into the guy's car, broke his window.
I always love that one.
His car. So in other words, if you have a locked mailbox, I wonder why that's locked. Might be something valuable in there.
In other words, people are jerks.
Yeah, they truly are.
Or somebody's not paying their bills. One of the two.
You don't, you have this is Brian Oak. I think people are recognizing the voice.
Yeah.
And you have a podcast.
I do, the Brian Oak Show podcast. We are rapidly approaching episode 350, and it is, 450. Once you start doing so many of these, I honestly can't keep track. We do 2 a week. In any event, a week from tomorrow, we have our 5th anniversary celebration of the Brian Oak Show podcast. And if you want to find it, it's available on the free iHeartRadio app, which is #1 for podcasting. Just look up the Brian Oak Show podcast and find a pretty cool local podcast about music, entrepreneurs, chefs, politicians, whoever the case may be that we get to talk to that week. It's fun conversation and some pretty good music.
You don't have to like the Grateful Dead.
Oh, my God.
But you have to respect what they meant.
I almost called you yesterday because you were talking about something else like that. Like, look, I don't love these guys, but what they've done, and I wanted to call you so bad, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe one day if I just don't ever bring it up again, he'll forget.
Never.
No, I know.
Phil Lesh, bass player, right, of the Grateful Dead?
Exactly right.
He's dead.
And
I don't know if he's gratefully dead, but he is dead.
He did. He died very recently at the age of 84. It was last week. In fact, he died on my daughter's birthday. And I didn't know anything about Phil Lesh. Like, again, I lived with 4 to 5 other Deadheads, depending on time of year, for a couple of years. And I came to quickly loathe the Grateful Dead, not because of the people who listened to them. I liked cute hippie girls. I liked all the extracurriculars and all the fun things that went along with it. I just wished the music was better. And now I feel like I have to go back and do a new listen, because having learned what I've learned about Phil Lesh was not a San Francisco hippie. He was not your typical tune in, turn on, drop out, Haight-Ashbury guy, although he got into it eventually. He was a violinist. He was a trumpeter. He was going to highly regarded schools of music. And he was also volunteering at a radio station where he came across a chance to meet Jerry Garcia. And he didn't necessarily love bluegrass, but at that time, that's what Jerry Garcia was doing, and said, hey, let's have you on the radio station this weekend. He's like, okay. And from there, they developed a lifelong friendship and collaboration. The Grateful Dead didn't start till like 5 or 6 years after that. But Phil Lesh was one of these guys. And Jerry said, you want to be in the band? He's like, doing what? Like, you're not really a trumpet band. And
we ain't no trumpet playing band. That's not what they call rock and roll. Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, one of my favorites, man. That debut is about as good as debuts get. But he was invited, and Jerry's like, we need you to play bass. He had literally never touched a bass before that day. And then would go on to become, but he had one of these crazy minds. Like, he was one of those avant dudes. He was almost like a Frank Zappa. Again, not a big Frank Zappa fan myself, but you have to respect what he did to music, Common. I always love that one.
Uh,
You're welcome. And, but I mean, Phil Lesh was the same guy. So he brought Not that the other guys weren't talented musically, but he brought this weird, innovative crink-cronk, whoop-beep-boop to his area. And I remember the handful of times my friends twisted my arm and made me go to Dead shows. If you were down, I believe it was on the left, maybe on the right. Someone's going to roast me on the text line, but I think it was on the left, and it was called the Fill Zone. And there were people who would get there hours early so they could go down and stand directly in front of Phil Lesh and watch him do his thing. They would sell bumper stickers out in the parking lot called the Fill Zone. They would also sell pot persimmon bread, which made it much easier to buy a dumb sticker like that.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to like the Brian Oak podcast, but you need to respect it. Now, I like that. That's a nice text message.
Okay, that was pretty good.
You don't have to like it.
Is that a regular?
Yeah, it's a lot of the regulars.
Yeah.
Here's one. Now, again, and we're going to talk about Q Jones here. We just call him Q.
Oh, yeah. Q.
But two podcasts a week. It's your 5th anniversary, but you've only done 350 episodes. That math doesn't add up. Meat sauce. You said more. You had more than 350, didn't you?
Well, wait. 5 times 50 is 250 times 2. Yeah, we don't have 500 yet. We might be over 4. I can't remember the number because I normally go to bed at 9 o'clock, and I was up very, very, very much later than that, past my bedtime last night. I don't know. World's on fire. And I was watching all that. And so even though I got some sleep later, my brain's a little addled today. So tell you what. Why don't you get out your handy-dandy iHeartRadio app, free to put on your handheld device, which also, doubles as a communication device? Yeah. Is that right? Handheld computer. And take a look for yourself, and then just scroll back, because there are hundreds of episodes for you to peruse, and they're going to continue. And on the most recent one, we've got a free musical event coming up a week from tomorrow that everyone's invited to, but I'm not going to tell you the details here. You got to go listen to the podcast.
Now, I don't want to talk politics, but I will say this.
Okay.
I went to bed at 9:30 because I saw the writing on the wall right then. You could just see by the way the numbers were coming in that's what it was going to be. It's like when you go to a ball game and they're in the 6th inning and one team's winning 10-1. It's over, Johnny, and then you just leave. So that's what I did.
Well,
that's another story in itself. Now,
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, I don't talk about it. I voted for Nas Reed. Now, Nas Reed. I had a Nas Reed. I had a Nas Reed campaign sign in my
Did you?
In my front yard? Absolutely. Quincy Jones.
Yeah.
Died at the age of 91.
On Monday.
You don't have to like Quincy Jones, but you have to respect everything he did.
No, don't take that back. Walk that back. You have to like Quincy Jones. Do you know what?
The first time I ever...
There's not one person listening to this right now that hasn't heard a dozen Quincy Jones influenced or affected or produced songs.
The first time I became aware of Quincy Jones was 1981, working at a radio station in Great Falls, Montana, when he came out with James Ingram. Came out, and what was it The Dude? Was that the name of the album, I think? It had 2 big hits. It had Just Once, Jimmy Ingram on vocals, and then another song, one of my favorite songs of all time, called 100 Ways.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Quincy Jones who put the whole thing. Is that the whole
Find 100
Yes.
Ways.
Brilliant piece of work.
Yeah.
By Her Roses, Just Because. One of my favorite ballads of all time.
Yeah.
And then Just Once was a much bigger hit. Just Once. I can't sing. I can't do it justice. But nonetheless, that's when I first became aware of him. And then you start finding out a little bit more and a little bit more. And like you said, he's worked with hundreds even artists, and he's contributed not just music but in screenplay, soundtracks for music and television, and there's not much he didn't do in his career, and there's not many people he didn't work with.
I'm going to say something.
Including Michael Jackson.
During the most successful and influential part of his career, I'm going to say something that if people don't know a single thing about Quincy Jones could probably get me qualified. for the preposterous statement tournament. But in the case of Quincy Jones, it cannot. I know I'm given to hyperbole. I know I exaggerate about certain things. Quincy Jones, whether we're talking about as an arranger, a conductor, a performer, a composer, a producer, it's hard for me to think of someone else, a 7-decade career, as towering a figure in the influence of American music of the 20th century into the 21st century. I mean, yes, Berry Gordy brought us Motown, and Motown changed everything forever. Ahmet Ertegun showed us the model for what future massive record labels were going to be in the form of Atlantic Records. Phil Spector obviously had a huge impact on music and also worked with a tremendous number of people. David Geffen with all of his influence and everything he had to do, obviously later into the 20th century and into the 21st century. Quincy Jones, given the breadth and depth and wide range and longevity of his career, I don't think he has a peer in the 20th century, man. There's nobody else like him. Leslie Gore, let's go all the way back to the 50s, right? So you said you heard about him in 81.
Party.
Yep, he produced that. He produced the next 4 singles for her, all of which sold 1 million copies. Now, you have to remember it's the 1950s. You don't get to go to Spotify or Bandcamp and download those. You have to go to the record store and buy the 45. He produced 4 million sellers in a row. And this is already after a very long, before he got into this kind of production, he was a band leader. He was a conductor, composer. He was a singer. He did all of it for 10, 15, 20 years with the likes of Count Basie. Started working together with Frank Sinatra. And think about how long ago that was. And then just kept going through all of it. An unbelievable legacy.
I was reminded as I was going through the stories, because almost every major metropolitan daily or music, entertainment rag did a story on it, right? Because he's that legendary.
Yeah.
And I was reminded of a story that I knew of, but I'd forgotten all about it. He ripped the Beatles.
Really?
Do you know that story?
I don't think I do.
Oh, my. Here it is.
Quincy didn't like the Beatles?
Arguably the most, it says, Quincy Jones was never one to shy away from voicing his opinion. Arguably, the most notorious example was when the late producer gave an interview to New York Magazine in 2018 and shared his first impression of the no-playing Mother Waters, the Beatles.
The what?
I can't swear in the air.
Oh, I see.
They were the worst musicians in the world. Paul was the worst bass player I ever heard.
Come on.
He reserved particular venom for drummer Ringo Starr, with whom he recalled recording the song Love is a Many Splendored Thing for Starr's 1970 debut solo album, Sentimental Journey. Here's what Jones said. Ringo had taken 3 hours for a 4-bar thing he was trying to fix on a song, and he couldn't get it. We said, mate, why don't you get some lager and lime, some shepherd's pie, and take an hour and a half and relax a little bit? While Starr went away, Jones claimed that he snuck English jazz drummer Ronnie Verrell into the studio. He came in for 15 minutes and tore it up. Ringo comes back and says to George Martin, can you play it back for me one more time? So George did, and Ringo says, that didn't sound so bad. Jones said, and I said, yeah, you bleeper, because it ain't you. Great guy, though.
Wow.
He has since, though, obviously those comments created an uproar, because, you don't have to like the Beatles, but you have to respect them, right? He later...
When will it end?
McCartney recalled his reply, said... because McCartney talked about it. A few months later, McCartney revealed to GQ that Jones had called him to suggest he was misrepresented in the interview. Paul, I didn't really say that thing. I don't know what happened, man. I never said that. You know I love you guys. McCartney recalled his reply was, I said, if you had said that, you know what I would have said. Bleep you, Quincy Jones.
And Paul would have said that.
And he was like, oh, Paul, you know I love you so much. Yeah, and I know you do, Quinn. So he basically said, that he didn't really say that. So I guess he did have some respect for him. Though he said that the story goes on to say, and I didn't know this, the Beatles weren't the only superstars Jones took aim at. In the same interview, the legendary producer called Michael Jackson, with whom he worked on albums Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. How do you say it? Machiavellian, as Machiavellian as they come, criticizing him for allegedly stealing a lot of stuff from fellow artists without paying them. So he says Jackson was a musical thief.
Well, we were in a very gray area at that point. Like, sampling was becoming a much bigger thing than it had before, and people were paying attention. But, if you get away with it, you get away with it. And I'm not trying to defend Michael Jackson in that scenario at all, but certainly possible. Something important to remember, and again, I think there's more to life than pedestalizing, and what's the other word you use?
Idolizing and
pedestalizing. But it is worth noting, if people think like, who's Quincy Jones? Who cares? The dude did The Wiz, did The Color Purple. He won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Music Composition for a series, for the miniseries Roots. Maybe we remember Roots if we're old enough. Got a Tony Award for the best revival of a musical with The Color Purple. And throughout his career, he won the Grammy Legend Award, the Gene Hersholt Humanitarian Award, I believe 28 Grammys in total, if I'm not mistaken, a Primetime Emmy Award, a Tony Award, and he was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and 4 Golden Globe Awards for his movement into the film world, but he didn't win a single one of those, and apparently I read in an interview some years later that he was not at all happy about just a straight snub in 11 nominations.
Did he win a City Pages Award?
I know that you have.
I've won several.
I've won one.
You won one as well.
I did.
Here's a text message. You've been nominated for Preposterous Statement.
Here we go.
Earlier, Oak said, as this industry gets more grueling, keep in mind, this was said by a guy who does 2 podcasts a week to a guy who works 3 hours a day.
I always love that one.
It's grueling.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I didn't really mean it in terms of the day-to-day heavy lifting. I meant in that staying alive in this industry these days has become more challenging, but I will never let the facts get in the way of a good joke. That was pretty brilliant, actually.
It's grueling.
Okay, come on now. But you know what? That wouldn't make it out of the first round in the Preposterous. That won't even, the nomination committee won't even put that in there.
4th grade science teacher to a young Brian Oak.
Here we go.
You don't have to like frogs, but you have to dissect it. Common man to Brian Oak before a Rock Talk segment. You don't have to like getting ripped on air, but you have to expect it.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
You're telling me that? You're telling me that.
And then I'm supposed to tell you.
Oh, here we go.
Aretha Franklin, you don't have to love her, but you have to respect her. The listeners on a roll today.
Now, see, I could spend the afternoon doing this. This is fun. I like this.
Somebody has texted me this same question, a variation of it, for the last 3 weeks. They're dying to know what you think of the band Oasis, and then what do you think of because they're doing a reunion now.
Sure.
So what do you think of the band Oasis? So he doesn't have to say, and what do you think of their reunion?
Well, the first thing I would say is you don't have to like Oasis.
Very good.
Oasis is a very interesting animal because they basically came out of the gate in the UK saying we're better than the Beatles, and obviously that's sacrilege, right? Like there's no way you can't. And then they became the second most popular band in UK history, only to the Beatles, and their songs are good. Most of them, to me, sound exactly the same, but they've got a couple, and if we could play songs here, it'd be fun to show you an example. Right. They've got a couple that are really noteworthy, in my humble opinion, but this is also a band that popped when I was in the 90s, when my radio career was just getting underway. In fact, do you remember the old Uptown Bar in South Minneapolis? Sure. Yeah, I mean, and then it got wiped away for an Apple store or a Columbia store or some whatever. But that was a heritage place, and all these greasy, grimy Minneapolis and local bands would play there, but also bands that were on their way up, like they've never played. I saw Oasis in the Uptown Bar. there might have been 120 people in there.
Really?
And of course now, I mean, well, not now, but even, a few years later, you wouldn't be able to see them anywhere smaller than Target Center.
Right.
And so I like them, I mean, the whole, we're brothers who fight, and we're a bunch of, Manchester tough guys. And that, I can live with or without that stuff. It's about the music. And so I like them. And, it was only a matter of time. I mean, they are going to make a freakish amount of money on this tour.
Just so you know, we can play music during the segment. We just can't podcast the segment. So we could just eliminate. We could just say, if you want to listen to Rock Talk, you have to listen live. You cannot listen. Because then 10B just clips the whole thing out and we dump it. We can do that.
That sounds like too much work.
Well, I just think it's a chop, so it probably takes 20 seconds. But we can always do that if we have a segment where we really want to dive in musically.
Well, we'll think about that moving forward.
Until then, they can find your podcast where?
I would go to the iHeartRadio app, the home for podcasting, #1 podcasting destination in the world, and look for The Brian Oak Show. And again, cool free show, early and free, coming up next week, and you'll get the details on the latest edition of the podcast.
Thank you, my friend. Talk to you again soon next week, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday. Take a short break, come back. The legendary Mark Rosen's next here on The Fan.